Welcome to a deeper conversation. This conversation grew out of the word freedom. When I sat down to talk with this man about freedom, I thought I was recording one story. But after talking with his wife, I realized I wasn't. They've shared a life together, but they each carry a different part of what freedom has meant. He experienced it through military service and memories that have stayed with him ever since. She learned about it through the stories of those who served before her, and through the freedom to choose the life and beliefs that became her own. Rather than telling these stories separately, I've woven them together. At times you'll hear him, and at times you'll hear her, and sometimes one helps tell the other's story. Together, they remind us that freedom isn't just a moment in history. It's something that can shape generations, families, and the lives we build long after the battles are over.
They say every time a plane goes over here, we get them a lot because we're right at the end of the field. But you hear one of those jets going by, that's the sound of freedom. This is the best country I've ever lived in, and I've lived in a bunch. My father was 32 years in the Air Force protecting the freedom. I didn't know until years after that he worked on the atom bomb. I asked him one time, what were we doing at Alamogordo and White Sands, New Mexico, and Albuquerque, New Mexico? And he was working on the bomb. He could never say anything, but years later, he said that's what they were doing, and that he worked on it, for 6 years. So that's, our offering and doing something about protecting our freedom. Freedom is a big part of being in this country. I wouldn't live anywhere else. Even, Switzerland, that's pretty laid back and never been in a war or anything like that. And there for the longest time, I thought we were the protector of the world, sticking our nose in, wars and Vietnam. I don't know what the hell we were doing in Afghanistan. The Russians got their butts kicked in Afghanistan. So we go over there and say, oh yeah, they kicked their ass too. So some people think we're the protection of the world. And to a degree we are.
What I'm going to share with you today is not only a definition, but how I grew up understanding it. And I was 4 years old of a first memory of a distant relative who had served in the First World War, would come to our home, visit with us, and at that time in history we neither had a telephone, a TV, or anything remotely resembling that. I think there might have been a radio, but I think we listened to it maybe twice. So getting together as family and friends was a big deal. We'd eat, we'd sit around, and we'd tell stories. And this sweet man would bring his guitar with him, and he would sing, and he would play the guitar, and I just loved listening to him. And he would also share stories of the First World War, which as a child, I can't say that I fully understood it, but I was sure glad he was there. And one of the songs he sang was called You Are My Sunshine. And every time he would sing it, he'd reach over and tussle my hair, because I was the youngest one there at the time. My hair was curly and it was soft, and he'd smile and wink at me. I knew that he had been to war. I knew he'd gone across the big ocean, because I knew the ocean. And even as a child, I wondered why. That song became so valuable to me that I sang it to my children when they were infants, to my grandchildren, and to my great-grands. And it still means the world to me. That being said, this man came home from the First World War. Remember that.
Did you want to follow your dad's footsteps in the military?
No, I was going to go in the Marine Corps, Air Corps, and I flunked my eye test. And they said, well, no, you can, be a RIO, which they call a radar intercept officer. You fly in the back seat. And you're coming on a target, you're in charge of the plane, but that's not flying it. And, my dad was a pilot. I always wanted to be a pilot. So that didn't work out. And trying to make up my mind what I was going to do, I got drafted. And, all these people were going to Canada. And I said, no, I couldn't go to Canada. My dad would disown me.
Did you have a choice?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I could have gone to Canada. But I said, no, the thing to do is you got drafted, you do what your country wants you to do. So I didn't think it would go that far, but they drafted me. And
So where did you go?
into the Army. And I asked my dad, he was straightening my tie and everything. I was getting ready to go overseas and wearing my uniform. And he comes up and straightens my tie. And he said, son, just go over there and do like you've been told to do. Follow your orders and you'll do fine. And my mother hit the roof. Yeah, you were sending your son to war. Kiss him, hug him, do something.
I was standing there when this happened.
Mother got hot about it. He's not one of your troops.
And did he?
Oh, yeah. He gave me a hug. He said, oh, I love you. But that's what freedom means to me.
Then I remember 11 uncles, biological uncles. One of them served in the Pacific and was in a Japanese prisoner of war camp for 2.5 years. We called him Uncle Johnny. He came home 6 feet tall, weighed 88 pounds, and he was in a hospital in the United States for well over a year, really, after he came home. He came home, remember that. He married and had children. The next was my Uncle Don, and he was in the Air Force in Europe, behind enemy lines, and his plane was shot down, and he landed in the top of a tree, and he hung there for 2 days with German soldiers walking around on the ground looking for him because they knew he wasn't where the plane crashed. He passed out after 2 days. When he came to, he was in a little house with strangers taking care of him. They got him better, and they helped him find his way back to the American Army. He came home. Remember that. I had 4 other uncles who served in Europe in the Army, going door to door, helping people survive and surviving themselves and protecting the people of Europe. They came home. Remember that. I had the rest of my uncles feed the nation and our Army, and they were engineers, and they went all over the place building here in the country of the United States and in other countries. They came home. Remember that.
They sent me to Fort Benning for basic training and then to Fort Polk. And when you went to Fort Polk, you knew where you were going. I was training to go to Vietnam. And that's where I ended up. Vietnam and a place called Pleiku, right on the Cambodian border in the 4th Infantry Division. And so I spent almost not all my year, that tour is a year. I started fainting all the time. And my first sergeant made his first jump on Normandy when he was 18 years old. That's how long this old guy had been around. And so he was kind of my mentor. And I was there for, 3 months. And they decided, no, you can't do this, because I was passing out. And they sent me to the Philippines, and, you can't do what you're in the infantry for anymore. I wasn't too sad about that. They changed my MOS, from 11B, which is infantry, to 92B was you work in a hospital in the lab, drawing blood and doing all that kind of stuff. And I had done that when I was in high school and in Japan, when we were stationed over there. They put the kids to work around different places on the base, and they sent me over to the warehouse, and I was going counting nuts and bolts, and that was not a challenge to me. And I went back over to the teenage club. I said, hey, you got something a little bit more challenging? And they said, well, we got a opening over at the hospital to work as a lab. But I didn't know what I was going to do over there. And I thought, well, yeah, that sounds interesting. And the lab was connected to pathology and autopsies. I got to do a couple of appendectomies. And there's the Sound of Freedom Company. So I started working on just watching test tubes and urinal bottles and stuff like that. And they started letting me do different things around the lab. And before the summer was out, I was making rounds in the wards, drawing blood in the morning, then running the tests in the lab. And I got to sit on 2 autopsies were kind of interesting on. And, I'm a 14-year-old kid doing this.
What'd you think?
I thought it was, I wanted to be a pathologist when I got out of there.
Yeah.
But I remember that they had the OBGYN day, and all the expecting mothers was there, and my biology teacher from school was there. And I got to stick her, and she thought that was really great.
Yeah.
This is my student.
I'm going to tell you a story about my father and I. When I was very little, somewhere between 4 and 5, he started reading the Constitution to me. Odd thing to read, isn't it, to some people? But it was great for me. And the first time I remember him reading clearly the Declaration of Independence, we the people of the United States, in order to create a more perfect union. And he would stop there, and he would get down on his knees, and he'd get right in front of me, and he'd tussle my curly hair like everybody did, and he'd smile at me, and he'd say, "You are we the people." That stuck with me from that day to this. I still read the Constitution. I have it in a little book, and I fully understand what the Declaration of Independence was. It was when a group of people stood up to England, wrote the Declaration of Independence, knowing full well that they would probably not live much longer. Many of them didn't. Many of them did. That was my understanding of what freedom is. The men that I told you about in the Second World War, that was my family. The miracle of them is simple. They all came home, and when I got older, I asked them a simple question. Why'd you go? Why'd you go? God, family, and country. Would you go again? They all hesitated, but they all said yes. Every single one of those men and their wives and their children and the old men that they left home were farmers. They fed this nation. They fed the military starting then and even now. What does it mean to be free? I think that's an easy one. Freedom for me is the United States of America. I've been in other countries. There are exactly 8 countries where people cannot practice what they believe, or their lives and that of their families stand in peril of death. But believe me, they're not places where you want to live.
Do you have a favorite story from over there?
What's that?
I like the one of you taking your troops into the tall grass. I love that story in Vietnam.
Oh. I was taking my squad out on a recon patrol. And we got up this open field, and there's all been rice paddy, and the grass was up to your waist. And we walked up to it. I saw something moving around through the bushes. And, we were brand new. Our first patrol was gone on. I said, that could be a bad guy. So I go walking out in the middle of the rest and told him, hollered at her, "Oh, Troy, was give up. And being amazed, and it kept coming. I said, "Oh my God!" And so, country boy that I am, I reached down and picked up a rock and threw it, and all of a sudden, this giant male peacock comes flying over there, and me and my guys chase that damn bird all over the place, and they're like quail. They don't like to fly. They run a little bit and then he'd fly, and he got up in a tree, and we gave up on him. But
They didn't kill the enemy bird.
Right.
That's a story he used to tell to our kids because it was one that wasn't so graphic and they loved it. And then he told it to when he went to the school where Laura was teaching, and then where Laura was teaching with fifth graders. And he would tell that story because it's easier on the kids' brain.
Right.
yeah.
And when he was in Vietnam, like all the other men that were serving there, they did not know how many things were just being done on a daily basis that would do damage to their bodies later on. They did not understand that, and they did not understand PTSD or post-traumatic stress disorder. They just knew that they were there to serve their country and to do the best they could, and in my words, just come home. They were exposed to what we now know were burn pits, and they were exposed to them on a daily basis, sometimes 2 and 3 and 4 times a day. These pits carry toxins that get in your body and they don't get out. Bob and I married. We had our children and our family. Years later, when he was approaching 80 years old, he took our car and drove from our home into the VA just for a general appointment. He drove the only car we had. 2 hours later, I hadn't heard from him. 3 hours later, I hadn't heard from him, and they called me. They had put him in the hospital. To make a long story short, he was in the hospital for about 11 and a half weeks, and they amputated his right leg 3 times, 3 different surgeries above his knee. So he's now in a wheelchair. The reasons for all that go all the way back to Vietnam.
They came home.
They all came home. And by the way, so did my husband.
But that's, freedoms. A lot of guys have put their lives on the line to defend freedom for us. A lot of guys have died doing it. I went to a couple of cemeteries that bring that to mind for anybody that's, defending freedom. Gettysburg, Mississippi, mostly American, well, we were all Americans then, but the Yankees, we call them.
Which is what we all are now.
And you see these little pretty little white little gravestones, and look over and across the alley, the other side of the fence, and saw little headstones out there with necks grass 5 feet deep, and they were Civil War
Southern soldiers.
And,
didn't take care of them. They do now.
Oh.
But they didn't then. Now, that was way in the past. Today, they do. It's all clean and neat and the whole bit. But back then, they just said, we beat them, they're done, believe them. And that is kind of, when you think about it, no war is good, or I don't think it is. But they're unavoidable sometimes. Right?
Well, they were the enemy.
That's right.
They didn't have any money to put up fancy cemeteries like Gettysburg and all that.
Right.
They got all their names up there and everything. And then you look over to the grass deep.
Didn't make this Southern boy real happy. So things change, but they balance.
Yeah.
Or I think they do.
We used to have wars when I was a kid. You pick a side, well, I'm a rebel. And they had little Confederate hats that they sold at the dime store.
That's true.
And they had blue caps for the guys that wanted to be Yankees. We're going to have rocket fights and everything.
Hard to believe, isn't it?
Yeah.
I hate to tell you, but the girls did the same thing.
That was crazy. But, they said the South will rise again. They haven't, but
And I'm grateful.
and they've gone through and changed all the different ports that were all Southerners' names. I don't know what they did that for. And they joined chicken shit names like changing 150 years ago, changing the names of
It's altering history.
Yeah.
ports.
I think that's what bothered me. Is that what bothered you? The
What?
fact that changes history when they do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But when people see it, it's just a whole different thing. It's not a reality.
Yeah.
And then my favorite guy was General Patton.
And why is that?
He was killed after all the circle. He was killed in a Jeep wreck. The guy that played Patton in a movie did a great job of it.
What movie?
Patton was the name of it.
Oh, okay.
And there's a part in there that the chaplain said, General Patton, I hear you're a religious man. He said, yep, I pray every goddamn day.
That's exactly right.
But, yeah.
Years later in my life, I met a man. The minute we met each other, we knew we had something in common. Not just attraction. We had that. But it was something deeper than that. Something that would keep us together forever. We understood what it meant to serve others, not just ourselves. We married, and a little while later after we got married and had 3 kids, I opened my front door one day and there were 2 guys standing there. This was in Florida. They looked like wet rats. They had on long-sleeve white shirts and funky little ties and carrying some book in their hand. And I thought, oh, my word, they're going to pass out. Before they opened their mouths, I said, get in here. Let me give you something to drink. They came in. I gave them some water, some lemonade, made them sit down in the air conditioning, and they taught us the gospel of Jesus Christ according to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. We accepted. Bob and I and our oldest daughter were baptized together, and later on we went to the temple. Were it not for the things that other people did way back in time, and for my family members and others, Bob and I would have never been able to make that decision. We wouldn't have had that freedom to do so. We would have had to done what somebody else said we should do. Thank God for a country where you get to vote and you get to be heard, recognizing that you have to listen to others and you can do no harm. This to me is freedom. I love it. I will live for it, and if need be, I would die for it. Service for our country truly never has been free. It's always been paid for by men and women who care sincerely about a freedom of democracy. We live not very far from a very busy military base. When those planes go over and he thinks I'm not listening, I look at him every now and again. He actually salutes when he's sitting in the chair. And I've asked him a number of times, hey, why do you do that? He said, I'm remembering those that didn't come home. And I'm remembering how very, very blessed I am.
But that's freedom to me.
Freedom.
That's it.
I love all the planes that have crossed by over the whole time.
A lot of people, guys, gave their lives for freedom.
Are you still in touch with anyone?
In Vietnam,
Yeah.
there was
They're gone.
no, there wasn't anybody.
We're going to outlive them all. Right?
Yeah.
That's the plan. Okay.
But, every time the plane goes over, that's the sound of freedom.
What I appreciated most about these conversations is how they reminded me that freedom has more than one story. For Bob, freedom is inseparable from the people who fought to protect it and the responsibility of remembering that history. For Ava, freedom is something we live every day, in the choices we make, the way we treat others, and the opportunities we've been given. Listening to both of them reminded me that freedom isn't something we should only think about on holidays. It's something worth noticing, appreciating, and using as well. Until next time, keep listening, keep wondering, and keep exploring the words that shape your world.